So the title sounds really great, right? It's got all this stuff to it, and everybody wants to know what it is. Grace came up with that, and I just want everybody to know that. This is really just a discussion about a couple particular projects we've done and how we've been able to incorporate all the different components of Laserfiche or our implementation of Laserfiche anyway into those. Am I going one way? Okay. First of all, let's talk about Frisco ISD. I got to get down. I'm not really a stage guy, so let me just get down here. Frisco ISD is a very fast-growing school district. Frisco, city of Frisco in Frisco, Texas, located about 30 miles north of Dallas. The school district's growing at a population rate of about 2,500% over the last 2 decades. We had 3 campuses in 1992. We have about 65 campuses today. The growth is really phenomenal. Frisco as a city has grown from, when I moved there in 1992, at 6,500, there's 155,000 people there today. So growth is really the thing that challenges us most in the district. It's estimated we'll still grow another 30% over the next 5 years. We will open 4 high schools in 4 years. We hired 600 plus teachers last year and onboarded them over the summer, and I'll talk a little bit about how Laserfiche is helping us do that. We contracted with DocuNav, our VAR reseller, in 2012, and that relationship's gone very, very well, and the things we've accomplished really have been significant through Laserfiche as an overall platform. We're on Rio. We have about 300 named users, and we have the system set up literally to where we have potential for thousands and thousands of public users. Picture over on the right, very proud of that. That's our new, what will be the Dallas Cowboys practice facility. It's a 12,000-seat indoor facility, but the significance of that is we're partnered with the city and the school district, and so our high schools will be playing their high school football games inside in a 12,000-seat stadium that's also shared by the Dallas Cowboys. So it's some really cool stuff. I got to hit the right button. So some more about Frisco. 7.7% compared to the same increase over the same time last year. Total number of students, I say 53,451, but that's changed already. I'm sure that's outdated. We have 2,400 seniors, and we have 3,600 kindergarten students, which is how you know you're going to have that growth continue. There's some other statistics up there that if you are involved in K-12 education, those are important to you. If you're not, if you're here with a company or a corporation, you really don't care about those, so we won't spend a lot of time talking about those. We have about 7,600 full and part-time employees, and that's a 35% increase over the last 3 years. So those numbers are important when we start getting into some of the things that we've been able to do and some of the things we've managed to do. Again, growth is the key. I was brought in to Frisco ISD about 5 years ago, and the instructions I was given a couple instructions. One was don't tick anybody off for at least a year, because I really didn't understand public education, that culture. I came from a corporate background. At EDS, I provided business process and integration and innovative technology to Fortune 100 companies around the globe. I really didn't understand the whole school environment. The other instruction I was given was help us figure out how to continue to grow, to continue to add schools, add teachers, and reach students, but not in a way that we had to continue to grow the HR department or the accounts payable department or the procurement department. So look for efficiencies of how you could do that. From an EDS perspective, when I would go to some place and I would say, we're going to get together, we're going to consolidate, we're going to integrate, and we're going to really streamline your process, but don't worry, that's not because we want to cut people. It was always because you wanted to cut people. In the school district, growing like this one, that's not the issue. The issue is I just can't keep having to hire people. So it wasn't that we were looking to reduce jobs. We were just looking to improve efficiencies. So I believe in a school district particularly, and frankly, it's true at corporations I've worked at, General Motors and Hilton Hotels and a lot of others. Blindfold me. I'll throw a rock. I'll find an opportunity. They're everywhere. Everywhere you can imagine. and they're all around us. It comes down to how do you identify them, how do you prioritize them, how do you spend your time on the things that are truly valuable and not just the things that are neat. So when my guys come to me or there's someone has an idea of something they need to automate or integrate, the first question is always, how much time do you spend doing that? Because if I'm going to save you a day, a week, a year, I'm probably not going to make that investment. But if I'm going to save you thousands and thousands of hours every year, that's an investment I want to make. So you have to identify the opportunity, the priorities, and prioritize them. They're often, this is an example of a letter over here that we're going to get into in a little bit more in a second, but they're often a cry for help. They're often a group of people, nothing but the best intentions. They work as hard as they can. They're involved in heavy lifting, and they're doing their job, whatever it takes to get people paid and to deal with students in the classroom. But they don't see how broken things are until it finally gets to a point where they're on overload. They can't possibly get there. So it's a cry for help. They feel that they don't have time to fix it, and what they should be thinking is they don't have time not to fix it. And we encourage everyone in our organization to consider the possibilities now. Once you start exploring what some of the tools can do, and particularly the Laserfiche tool can do, people start seeing it differently. I have a quote there. I love this quote. Ben Hogan, golf's a game of luck. The more I practice, the luckier I get. And that's because what we're doing here is the same thing. We're practicing to improve processes, to bring integration, to use the technology. And what we're finding is the more and more we do that, the luckier and luckier we get. Because when we go to some of these other groups and we tell them what's possible, it's a fun thing to watch. I had one tell me the other day she thought she was going to cry. So I assume everybody here is already a Laserfiche user, right? Anybody that's not, it's just here shopping around, wondering what they're going to do. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what the different tools are. Just understand, from our perspective, we have imaging, archiving, forms, workflow, integration, quick fields, business process, roles, security. It's pretty much what everybody's got. But the important part is, how do you use those and how do you apply those to solve the problem that you have? Again, you've seen this slide. Go download it, use it in your own presentations. It's the standard stuff of, you're going to reduce the cost of printing, filing. You're going to eliminate costs of pulling and transporting records. You're going to instantly fulfill requests. You're going to easily locate documents. You're going to print, view, email documents right from the desktop. You're going to integrate to existing applications district-wide. The possibilities are endless. Applied wisely, the platform can do everything from order bathroom supplies and toilet paper to improve graduation rates. I truly believe that, and I think we've actually have proven that in some ways. And the most important thing that we tell when I sit down with a group that wants to start talking about some business problem they have to solve is I explain to them we're limited only by our own imagination. And I need them in the room to tell me how they think it should work, because I'll bet we can figure out how to make it do that. And so I think those things are all very important. I also think foundation's important. Don't overload the infrastructure and look for industrial strength solutions. In school districts in particular, and it's true in a lot of businesses as well, people often have these small little solutions, technology solutions. Well, this one does A, this one does B, this one does C. And those are all great, but they don't talk together, they don't work together, and they're not what I call industrial strength. So, to me, Laserfiche is that industrial strength, heavy-duty, heavy-lifting platform that I think builds a foundation for everything else that we're looking to do. So, workflow can be used as an integration layer between systems. It can monitor actions, generate. How many? See if there's anybody in the room that I recognize other than my team. How many use Laserfiche just for document imaging? You just don't want to have paper anymore. Do you use workflow at all?
Not yet.
When I first met with a customer, when we were first shopping around, and I looked at a lot of different platforms, one of the questions I had was, or using Workflow? They said, oh, yeah, we use Workflow all the time. I said, great. What do you do? Well, we store this document, and Workflow goes and saves it and moves it into a folder. I said, well, that's cool. Do you ever use that to go off and do something in another system or change a status or make 3 other things happen someplace else? And it was, well, they looked at me like I had 2 heads. And they'd been on Laserfiche for a long time. So it's great when people start to understand what it's capable of doing beyond just document imaging and how you bring all those things together. Customized forms, we can use a form to launch any process. We've put in place, there are challenges you have to overcome with the forms process. Often you have to have a license to be able to do certain things with forms. Well, we've managed to overcome a lot of that to where we can authenticate within our own network. We can send a form off as a public form now and have people actually enter data and metadata on it without it actually requiring the license on that side of it. So we've had to do some creative things there. We can have student data based on where the student is, based on roles, responsibilities, securities. We can streamline the process between documents, departments, employees, better use value of our human resources department. The other thing, there's a huge duplication of effort. Every department wants to have their own copy of this document. And so they keep track of the fact that they got a copy of that document on their own spreadsheet. And then they send that document to somebody else who gets it, and they keep track of it because they want to have a copy of, to know that they have it on their spreadsheet. Huge overlap of work. But once you put this infrastructure, and once we managed to put these infrastructure and these things in place, what we found was we created we established a foundation for best practices in business process. Because now we could do things and we could have different things talk in different places. So I like to think that this is me over there. It's a target-rich environment. I'm standing on top of a ton of opportunity, but you just can't always see them. You have to go look for them. So I've tried to create an environment within our organization where members of our team understand the capabilities, understand what it can do, understand the challenges we're trying to overcome. They understand how to prioritize. And from that very matrix perspective, allow everybody to go out and find the opportunities. And they come in the form of integration, data analysis, validation, document imaging, forms processing, workflow, business process and reengineering, improved communications, and organizational alignment. And we'll get into one of those in a second. Very amateurish view of kind of our environment when I first came in. It was funny, we have an e-school system and we have an e-finance system, both of them from the same company, a company called SunGard. And the idea was, well, we had that for e-school, we'll go get SunGard for e-finance, and then we'll have this integrated solution. Same company, 2 different software platforms, they don't talk to each other. There's no integration between those 2. So we manage that integration now ourselves. This is a little bit different view of as our network started to develop. We went out, we got basic data validation software, and we started putting some tools in place that allowed us to rationalize data and validate data. But then we met DocuNav. And DocuNav brought to me a solution that allowed me to build essentially an integration layer around everything using the workflow out of Laserfiche. And so now these various systems, as the need arises for us, it is easy for us to start punching out into these other systems to collect data, to update data. The update of data might be we actually go out and change a value in a user-defined field, or it may be that we simply put a record on a queue and then allow that application to go process as it would if it had been entered by hand. Again, ECM is the driver, forms, integration, workflow, and all the little systems. I have ... here. I'm still finding systems I didn't know existed within the school district. They're everywhere. But the challenges of all organizations are you have these silos. You have these people that They think that if they work really hard and they save a dime by changing the way they do something, that's a good thing. I should be rewarded. I saved a dime. But because they're doing something differently and now they're passing it downstream, you have the effect of it costs someone down here $1. So as an organization, you're losing 90 cents. But the whole save a dime, save a dime and spend $1, all because people don't get together and don't talk together in groups. But what I found was when you start talking to educators and you start using loops and you start talking about total quality improvement, they start getting that because that's something they do every day and they see every day in the classroom. So we started putting in place a program where we had organizational participation. We literally had the superintendent and all of their cabinet in an all-day meeting where we were talking about business process change and we were talking about priorities, who bought into it, allowed us to implement it, allowed us to move forward with these programs, and now going from communicating the vision through implementation. As we think about some of this, and I'm going to get into a particular case here in a second based on the original letter, but just keep in mind business process change and why I keep beating on business process changes. We've done some incredible things with Laserfiche, Workflow, Forms, Quick Fields, all the tools that we use. But if you don't start by reengineering the process, then it's a huge, huge waste of time. You're going to be in a constant state of programming the workflow itself. So you have to sit down and really improve the process. Make it a problem-specific, user-centric. I got this from Carnegie Foundation. I presented to them about a year ago, and this is one of the things I pulled out of their work there. It's awesome. Variation in performance is a core problem. See, the system produces the current outcome. We cannot improve at scale what we cannot measure. Anchor practice improvement in discipline inquiry and accelerate improvements through network communities. Another whole idea around Carnegie was fail quickly. If you're going to go in and you're going to make change, fail quickly so that you can move on to the next possibility. If you don't fail quickly, maybe you've got a solution, which is the good part. So we built a foundation. We started going out and we started delivering to solutions. And then we got to a point where now we just really need to be tenacious about how we keep it there and keep that sustainable change. Back to the letter. As I said, growing organizations face particular challenges. They're often overlooked until hard work can no longer make the difference. So I highlighted a couple areas over here in her letter. This letter started out, hey, we're a growing district. We're at a saturation point. The cry for help. Something's broke. We don't know what to do. But then they went in to talk about the current state, and they're saying we're completing several forms that include individual student scores. We have to put together a matrix. Then we have a decision by committee. We have an Excel program to keep track of everything. And so what the request was, we want you to help us print mailing labels. I said, oh, okay, you need help me print mailing labels. And the way the story went was, we have people, teachers at their houses at night, spread all over their dining room table. They're looking up addresses. They're handwriting envelopes to send letters back to parents of students. I said, wow, that's okay. Sure, I can help you with mailing labels, but help me understand why you're doing that. I said, let's start from the beginning. And they backed up like about a step. And we were back to the mailing labels again. I said, no. Let's go back to the very, very beginning. What is the business problem you're trying to solve? Once we got them to back up, we realized, hey, they have all these steps up here that they're doing manually. The one that bothered them was the writing of envelopes, but they had all these steps they were doing. They were tracking student assessments to see if gifted and talented testing was warranted. They were manually collecting requests from parents. They were manually validating each student. They were manually validating that the student is within the proper period of time to apply for gifted and talented testing. They were manually tracking returned documents from parents and whether or not the parents had sent them back. They were manually looking at the scoring matrix. They were scheduling the actual gifted and talented testing. They were manually putting together the scores that were coming back from gifted and talented, and they were looking at, then we get together in this collaborative group to figure out whether or not the student really was entitled to go through gifted and talented testing. And then they get to the one that they asked me to do. I said, we need to talk about the whole thing, not that. And then I said, what happens after you do the envelope? Well, we've got some more manual work we'd like to do. We manually update forms, we manually track them, we manually do data entry into the student data system, we manually notify campus staff that when they've been designated as GT, we manually schedule the students for GT test time, or classroom time, we manually file them into our green folder, because everybody's got to have a folder, and then manual folder distribution from campus to campus as students move. These things are being put in trunks of people's cars and being taken places. They have this extensive spreadsheet creation management that all the offices use and keep track of, and then they have a manual process to provide staffing levels by campus. They only needed mailing labels. So the solution that we talked about, and you guys are all Laserfiche people, so none of these will surprise you, but I think it is important because I'm sitting there listening to them thinking, all right, you want to track test scores, workflow. You want to provide notification. All right, workflow will integrate it with email. You want to have parents be able to fill out a form. Today, parents were filling out this, they were taking this copied 1,000 times over form home, and parents hand filling it out, and then they were bringing it back, and somebody was typing it in. So as you go through these steps, every one of these things, amazing to me, this is about the point where she said, I'm going to cry, was every one of them goes back to a tool that we have with Laserfiche. So workflow, we integrated to our student system. We're integrating to forms. We use quick fields as the tests come back in. They come back in from multiple sources, and so you're having to go out to all these places and pull this data in from these disparate systems. And then based on the data you're pulling in, decisions have to be made. Well, people don't need to make all those decisions. So, what we put together was a strategy where we'll decide which ones are definitely the answer is no. Student is not entitled to gifted and talented testing. And we'll decide which ones the answers are definitely yes. That student should go into gifted and talented testing. And then we'll leave that gray area in the middle for you to get together and have this community evaluation and review that allows you to, as a group, come together and decide whether or not that student should be gifted and talented testing. And then, or gifted and talented classroom. And then we can communicate that back to the parents. We have our eSchool system. It has we know who the parent is, the guardian is. We have their email address because 90% of everybody has to sign up electronically through and to get into Frisco ISD. We had all that information. We know who their teachers are. We know who their class schedules are. And so we're now able to go in and put together a solution that allows us to manage all of that. But it all started because they needed to print mailing labels. So, time savings, and I'm probably running ahead of schedule. It tends to be my habit. Time savings, essentially, the savings and efficiencies for GT organization will result in a lot of things, not the least of which is allows teachers to go home at night and focus on what they want to do in the classroom tomorrow and not go home at night trying to figure out how to provide a mailing label or how to communicate with that parent in a handwritten form when electronic is much better. The guess is we're going to save about 2,000 hours per student. We have about 1,000, 1,500 gifted and talented student requests a year. So my guess is we're going to save between 2,000 and 3,000 hours a year. That's really pretty conservative. It'll be a lot less than that. There'll be savings on paper. There'll be savings on all the other processes that go with it. But it'll allow them to restructure the process through technology. We can focus resources on things that change students' lives. We can increase morale of the gifted and talented team, and the benefits continue forever. One of the things I found is when we go in and we work with a group and we have a business problem to solve, and we say, how much time do you spend on that? In the beginning, I would look at it and go, oh, that looks like a lot of time. We'll just go do that. We'll implement that. And I've got a list of some things, other things we've done up here. But if you don't ask them up front to quantify the amount of time they're investing in that process, they'll forget when it gets to the back end. Because you'll do all this automation, and you can save them 3,000 hours a year. But if I didn't make them tell me that up front, they'd get to the back end and they go, well, that automation's nice, but it really didn't take that long, and so therefore I really don't have any more time. So you have to deal with that on the front end to make sure that they understand. And again, our partner of Doc Nev, Laserfiche, and all the mascots from the various Frisco high school teams, we think we have a winning team there. So how do we know we can do those things? People all the time come to me and they say, we want to have what you have, because we have onboarding processes that are pretty phenomenal to hire new employees, whether it be professional, auxiliary, substitute teacher. We have processes in place for accounts payable processing to where we no longer have to have clerks sitting there going through everything. We can do the three-way match ourselves. We can pay the bill. We don't have to go through that. We just let them handle the exceptions. All the things we can do. We have 125 plus workflows at this point in production. We do everything from handbooks to contracts, transfer requests. We even send birthday cards. Happy birthday. That's one of the silliest ones I ever saw. But, you build on things, right? So if you're just getting started, if you're in this room and you're just getting started, I speak with a lot of, particularly K-12 organizations. And they say, well, we want what you have. We want the onboarding part. We want the accounts payable part. We want the benefits part. We want all these different things. We want what you guys have. And I tell them, start small. Start with something really, really small, really, really simple, and think big. And then go hire the right partner to help you get there, and then go train the heck out of your people so that they can go do those things. But everybody wants to get to the end point, and you just can't go there. It's like playing chess. I'd love to put you in check with my first move. It's not possible. I have to strategically place things around the board. That's what we've tried to do. So we got accounts payable reconciliation. We've got electronic invoicing, where literally we would get stacks of paper this high from one vendor, invoices, because you have 60 different campuses, and those invoices would come in, and it would take, they have a little card, it would take them about 3 weeks to get through all the invoices. We do it in about 10 minutes now. So all those kinds of things make difference. We have volunteer acknowledgments. We have a lot of people who sign up that want to volunteer for the school district. All that's automated to where once they've been approved, we send out the acknowledgement to them, thanking them for for volunteering. We do homeless reporting. We collect writing samples. We've standardized a number of sub-processes, and we have a lot more going on as well. As I said, reengineering, to me, is the key. One of the first things we do when we start sitting down, we start talking about, okay, we're going to automate that, we're going to integrate that, and we're going to allow you to move from that manual environment to this new environment. It starts with, let's talk about the process. Otherwise, what happens is, I got a very talented workflow developer who spends all his time redoing things because they go, well, it was a month with an R in it, and there was a full moon last night, which means now we have to do this with the process. But it never comes out in the beginning. So without reengineering, project is guaranteed a lifetime of disappointment. All tangible benefits are derived from business process change. They're not really technology. I mean, we're using technology to allow us to change the business process, not the other way around. And I tell people all the time, they say, well, yeah, I want to implement that, but I want to be transparent. I really don't want people to know that anything changed. And I tell them, then let's just don't do anything and say that we did. Because if you don't want the change, then you're not looking for the improvement. Don't pave the cow path. So many times we'll just come in, we're just going to build a road right there. It's, no, we're not. We're going to stop. We're going to evaluate a better way of doing this. Provide opportunity for workforce to focus more on value-added responsibilities. And since inputs are always static, process improvement is the only way to improve the result. And again, teachers love little circles and things that say, total quality improvement to establish the vision. We use primarily as our starting point, Lean Six Sigma. If you go back to where I started all this in my time at EDS and HP, that's just a natural spot for me to go because I think there are certain tools available through a Lean Six Sigma process that really allow you to focus on quality, speed, teamwork, improve the processes, and base everything on data and facts. So if you can put all that together as part of your business process change, then you're better off. One other thing I'm going to go through very quickly, another project that maybe you'll find interesting. This was our professional onboarding project. We did it a couple years ago. We started out with basically a process where it took forever to get someone hired. And if you were a teacher and you worked at School District A and you wanted to come to work for Frisco, you wanted to give your notice at your current school district. So you would keep coming back going, well, you told me I was hired. Where are we in the process? I don't want to give my notice until I know everything else is done. And so we had this constant churning going on, trying to keep track of where everyone was in the process. So we basically carved out the hiring process. We came down to a part of the whole process, because, again, you don't want to bite off more than you can handle. But we had from the point they accepted to the point the contract signed, that was going to be the areas we were going to focus on. Created a SIPOC that goes, that looks at the supplier's inputs, the process, the outputs, and who the customer is, and put together basically the process that we're going to bring into the automated Laserfiche forms and workflow process. This is a diagram of the life of a folder. If you were getting hired at Frisco, this is how many steps it took for your folder to get through the process. So steps for the applicant, 346. Typical in a day, 4 times. Personnel taking the steps, 5. Step calculation came to a folder, and these were where the desks are in HR, by the way. So that folder was going from desk to desk to desk in HR for a total of 6,920 steps. That was the life of the folder. And if you were unfortunate enough to answer the phone when that prospective hire called to say, where am I in the process? Then you stopped everything you were doing, and you got up and you went and walked around these desks to look for the folder and whose desk it was in. Because that was the only way to know where it was. And you say, oh, you're at fingerprints right now. We're waiting on that. Today, it's one person, whoever answers it, 10 seconds, we're waiting on your fingerprints. But it's even better than that, because we're communicating with that hire now. We're sending them emails saying, we're waiting on your fingerprints. And we're sending them emails saying, you've completed your background check. And we're sending them emails saying, here are your internal credentials now to use to log on into our system. And oh, by the way, go take these videos, these online orientation videos. All that process has been automated now and integrated. Again, this was the process, what it looked like. We carved out what we didn't want to have within scope. The X's up there show where the process was broken. Some of the feedback we got as part of the voice of the customer, which is part of the Lean Six Sigma and SIPOC process, is it felt like it took a long time to get the ball rolling, and often worried me since I was being replaced by my former school, but still had not signed anything in Frisco. The uncertainty was difficult to manage. Again, it was one of those things where they feel better about it now because they were part of the process. We did the professional onboarding piece a couple years ago. The next year we did the auxiliary or the non-professional, the people that punch a time clock, and then this year we finished up with the substitutes. Some really incredible work done by my team here that allowed us to use Laserfiche to take those pieces. And the interesting part of that is, even when we first started talking about this project, the team that was working on, okay, we're going to figure out how to automate this, they weren't even sure what Laserfiche was. I knew because we were on the business side, and so I had to go sit down with them and say, you guys are talking about using Google Docs for this or for that. You need to understand, you have a powerful tool in the arsenal. You have an industrial strength solution that it can do everything you want to do and things you haven't even thought of yet. So it was really cool to see that light bulb go off and see people understand. This was the new and improved process. And so some of the challenges were again, we go back to growth rate. We hired 600 plus teachers last year. We'll hire 600 or 700 plus teachers next year. We had to get buy-in. We had to get the communication in place. We had to be able to set priorities. We had to overcome the functional silos. And when I first went out to take the Laserfiche tool out to share with the departments, change management's a funny thing. If people are interested, man, they'll embrace it. They'll be all over it. If they're hesitant, I leave them alone. I don't I don't waste time with them. Because if there's someone who sees the opportunity and they embrace it, I want to go work with them. Because there's too many opportunities for me to spend time trying to, push a rope. What we did was we went out, I met with every group, I explained to them what some of the capabilities were, I let them imagine what they were. The groups that raised their hand and said we want to be a part of that are the groups we went to work with. Other groups pushed back, no, we don't really need that, that's great, we're good. Those groups are now coming back in going, whoa, when are we going to get some of that? And I tell them they're in the back end of the priority cycle now. We'll go look at it if it makes sense. Some stuff on just what we learned so far out of the ISD initiative. I think one of the big things was, or out of the HR initiative for the ISD, I think one of the big things was groups learned to talk to each other. The group that was in HR who thought they had all the HR pieces didn't realize they needed somebody from child nutrition. They needed somebody from transportation, because all these play in. And go back to the dime and a dollar thing. If you don't understand what all the different pieces are, you can't possibly collaborate and accomplish things you want to accomplish. So I leave you with these quotes. Organization's only as effective as its processes. Productivity and quality improvements are a race without a finish line. Your organization's future will be determined by how well and how quickly you learn, adapt, and improve. APQC is also another partner of ours, American Productivity and Quality Center. Jack Grayson, he's about 100 years old now, but I think he jumped out of a plane last year for his birthday, so he's still hanging in there. Measure of success is not whether you have a tough problem to deal with, but whether it's the same problem you had last year. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. Stephen Covey. One of my favorite, Dr. Michael Hammer, who I think was a genius. Persistent problems cannot be addressed by means of task improvement. Problems are process problems, and in order to solve them, we must make processes the center of attention. Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. And then the last one really, I think, encapsulates my role at Frisco ISD. I worked at EDS. Ross Perot, founder of EDS, said he always wanted to be a pearl, that most perfect stone made by nature. And, I want to be a pearl. And he came to the realization he was never going to be a pearl. And so perhaps he could be the oyster that created the pearl, that most perfect stone made by nature. But alas, he was never going to be an oyster either. So he, like me, is really the grain of sand that irritates the oyster that makes the pearl. So what I do at Frisco ISD is I prod and I try to take them down a path. Sometimes they don't want to go. But at the end of the day, as I said earlier, start small, think big, find a great partner, train your people. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And thank you all for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Or if I covered everything so well, you don't need anything. Yes?
I'm curious how you handle failed workflows. Like I've worked with workflows in other systems previously, and there's a situation where sometimes they fail, and unless there's some guy sitting at the dashboard watching, you never know. So it's typically more mission critical stuff that can wait a day and repairs, but it's very time sensitive. How do you guys address that?
I think most of our stuff would fall into that category of, it's not really mission critical to this point, but there's always someone waiting for that next step, and so our phone rings. It's not a large organization. I mean, Brandon, do we do anything special on failed workflows other than we?
Well, I mean, we do a lot of try catches, so
Okay. Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry.
Giving up paper.
Oh, people to give up paper?
Yeah, they don't want to give up their paper.
Yeah.
Things go in perpetuity, they want to keep all their paper documents as well as electronic. A, how do you deal with that? And B, what do you have in place to guarantee your electronic documents are not lost?
Well, let's start with the first part of it. And the question is, how do you get people to want to give up their paper? Remember what I said? There's opportunities everywhere. And if I go speak with a group and I try to convince them that they should consider that, and they start pushing back, I move on to the next group. There's plenty of opportunities. I don't need to spend time there. I have one group right now that is the child nutrition group. And it's funny because you start somewhere. Start small, but people start to get it. Child nutrition group was one of those when we first started talking about doing their invoice processing out in the field. They weren't excited about it at all. They called me last week now after they've been doing it for about a year and said, look at this paper we have here. We need to get rid of this now. And so groups tend to get it after they've got on board, and they tend to come up with better ideas, even better ways of doing things, which is always exciting. And so from that perspective, it's easy to get them to want to do that and have them spend time with them. How do you know that you haven't lost a document? I'm more sure that I have the document today once I've got it scanned in Laserfiche than I ever was when it was in a folder that I didn't know where it was, when I didn't know who was looking at it. My boss that I had a couple years ago, it was funny because he said, well, what's our DRA plan? I said, well, we got to back up here and we got to back up here. 2 different buildings. We got our own little cloud. He said, well, what if a tornado comes through? I said, well, hit one building and we'll hit the other. He said, what if it comes through on a line and it gets both buildings? Because both buildings are only about 4 or 5 miles apart. I said, what would you do today if it hit and you were picking up pieces of paper about 12 miles down the road trying to get back to it? So we have worked with our vendor with DocuNav to look at ways to validate data integrity. I mean, we look, we see if a document's there. We can run scans to figure out if it's the right size because everybody gets more nervous about it when it becomes electronic. They should have been worried about it when it was on paper. Yes.
How do you prioritize those projects from the enthusiastic customer departments? Is it like squeaky wheel, or do you do an ROI analysis to determine which projects to work on first? Do you have like a list?
Now, we kind of have Bob's fudge factor. I look at it and I go, yeah, that's probably about right. If it's something that, from a school's perspective, I don't know if you're in education or not, but if it's from a school's perspective, if it's something that affects a student that you can bring efficiency to, you want to do that. We've spent most of our time on the business side because that's my background. That's, when I was brought over, I was told don't tick anybody off for a year. And so, I focused on the business application side. I think, once you get into a department and they see the benefit, they're your best ally and your biggest nightmare because they keep wanting more stuff. And so we went into HR and we did all the work in HR, and they got smarter and they wanted more and more and more as we went through it. And then that didn't allow us to have time to go other places. So the project, the Gifted and Talented project, was really the first opportunity for us, big opportunity for us to have on the student curriculum side. I'm very excited about because it's going to be a really a game changer for the realization within the district of what the tool is capable of doing. School districts, in my experience, have no clue the power and the capability of that platform. And I think that's my job is to make sure they understand it can be all these things. And I tell them all the time too, it's getting smarter as it goes. The more data you put into it, the smarter it gets. And so I think you see groups that adopt and come on board, they'll take a lot of your time for a while until you can really pretty much do all the work for them, and then you try to move on to another group. We spread it out a lot. We did a lot of work for a lot of different groups, and some of them really appreciated it and wanted more and more and more, and others, kind of moved on. They use it for document imaging and we'll get back to them sometime and help them understand how they can be more efficient. The workflow tool is really the key for me. I mean, you know, when we bought it was to buy it for document imaging, because I knew the school district would understand that. Paper. Okay, we're going to replace paper. But I always knew we were going to do all these other things with it. I always knew we were going to integrate the other applications. I always knew we were going to drive process from those forms into those applications without people being involved. It was just a matter of getting moving. And I think we're at that point now, but we're 3 years into it. Right. Yeah, we went out to each of the departments and sat down with them and said, here's what we can do. And some of them said, boy, I want some of that. And some of them said, that's really nice, Bob. Have a nice day. And those are the ones coming back now looking for help. Yes?
Do you have a workflow specialist in your group, or do you utilize the VAR for that?
Yeah, we started out with the VAR, but we brought, I hired a couple of my own programmers to come in, and I at this point, I'm not sure DocuNav, our VAR, really even knows some of the things we do now. They're still a great resource. We still use them. We still work through them for certain projects or certain periods of time, but Brandon is our primary workflow guy, although he's one of about 4 that are writing workflow right now. Yes?
From all your opportunities, it's like, is it like the department itself have a very clear business problems to solve before they get involved? Or they just sit down and announce what Laserfiche can do?
It's a combination of both. I'm really trying to spread an understanding to my team and trying to empower my guys to identify opportunities. Because 2 years ago, if I wasn't in the room, no one would know there was an opportunity. I'd be in a room, I'd hear what they were doing, I'd say, whoa, wait a second, we can do that. So now, more and more people on the team, sometimes I don't even know where they are and what they're doing. And they come back and they say, here we're working on this now, and that makes sense, let's do that. There are occasionally, you reel things back in, but my approach has always been, I'm going to paint this big vision up on the wall, and I want everybody here going there. And occasionally you get somebody who wants to go off this way, and you bring them back, but generally speaking, you're much more effective to have an organization that they're all going toward the same goal. Yes, sir? We got Laserfiche in 2012, and I support a lot of things, not just Laserfiche. So I have a team of 10, but I support the business finance applications, the security system, so a lot of different applications. Focused on Laserfiche exclusively is really probably equal to about 2 to 2.5 FTEs. No, it's all under me. There are advantages, and I've talked to other districts about what they do and other places and haven't been a part of it in the corporate world. There are advantages if you can keep it all under your own control, because you don't have all this finger pointing and questioning. You just go out and solve problems if you control it all, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that so far. Yes?
Do you use electronic signatures?
Brandon, stand up, turn around, and say it.
With our DQ process, we will, with the new forms 99. But other than that, if it's something like 99 requires a signature, HR wants it to be wet signature, they'll print, sign, scan back in, destroy the paper.
But we do have electronic acknowledgement.
Yeah, we'll do electronic acknowledgements. We're not using like a DocuNav or DocuSign integration or anything like that.
Yes.
We've been able to create an employment contract delivered by email. You click on it, it's electronic signature, send it back.
So when you say electronic signature, they're clicking it. I acknowledge I got it. You know that you sent to them because it's their credentials.
They sign by the PDF and send it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we first onboard people, we get a permission for e-consent form from them,
Yeah.
and they sign that one, and then from then on, we can send them, please click this button by by clicking this button, you're acknowledging that you agree to this. So
Right.
we do that, but as far as actually, using Topaz signature pads or DocuSign integration, anything like that, we don't.
So I hope, I hope the presentation was helpful to you, especially from the perspective of you start out trying to solve one thing, and if you keep looking and keep asking why, you realize there's a whole lot more. And the product suite, at least what we have, is such that I struggle with, when we sat down with Dr. Nav initially, I just said, tell me everything I need, because I wasn't smart enough to know what I needed, but I knew I needed everything I could get. And so we now are at a point where we look for opportunities to do something new and different in a different way, because we know that's going to grow and it's something we're going to be able to leverage. And so, we're excited about that, and this newest project we're doing will be the catalyst for a whole bunch of others, I think. So, thank you all for your time. A couple things. I have some other slides behind this. If you guys pull these up, that just talk about change management, common mistakes, challenge, how to tell success and failure, problem sources, keys to success, functional agenda, stuff like that. Download this off there. You're welcome to all that. That's basically 30-something years of idle ramblings of a raving lunatic. So, but I think it's good stuff, and I think it'd be helpful to you to have. So get that off there. I've got business cards up here if you want, or my contact information's in the thing. So thank you.